Hey everyone, I just thought I'd come back onto this YouTube channel one last time before you go ahead with your board exams. This is one last video to encourage you to do your best as you go forth and attempt your board exams for the 10 standards. This will be the first time that they attempt a public exam. So this video is just to encourage you 10 simple tips which will help you to ace your board examinations. Okay, these are both for the 10th and the 12th for your French subject. These are general tips for a French language paper. Okay, they are not specific to either the 10th or the 12th. They are general tips for a French paper, and some of these aspects you could apply to your other papers as well. Okay, these are 10 simple tips from me to you which will help you ace your boards. So the first tip, and that is very important, is how you divide your time. Okay, this is something that you can use for all your papers. You should know firstly how many marks you're attempting, right? And how much time is allotted for the paper. So for your French paper, you have 2.5 hours, right? So you can allot your time. Please keep at least 20 to 30 minutes to check your paper towards the end, okay? Because that is where you find out all your tiny errors, and that is where you gain the marks at the end, okay? So you divide your time well. The suggested division I give you is 20 minutes to your section A, 30 minutes to your grammar, 30 minutes to your comprehension because you need to read, right? You don't only have to write, you need to read the passage as well, right? 40 minutes to your writing skills because there is where you have to think, okay, before you write. Just 20 minutes to prose and poetry because this is the section for you to score, right? You already know what is going to be asked because you have the textbook with you, right? So for prose and poetry, it shouldn't take you that long. So if you give around 2 hours to actually writing the paper, you are left with 30 minutes, which is sufficient enough for you to check. Okay. The second tip I have for you is to be neat. Okay, when you're answering your paper, this goes for any paper. Maintain the order of the questions as far as possible. Okay, don't start with 4 and then go to 6 and then come to 1. Don't do that. If you find no other option, then it is acceptable. But as far as possible, try to write in order. Okay, go from 1 to 2 to 3 and then so on. If you want to start with the fourth question, for example, then you leave the requisite number of pages and then you start with the fourth question, say on the sixth page or on the seventh page or something like that. Okay, those calculations you can make beforehand if you know what order you want to answer in. Please make sure you're writing a new question on a new page. This comes in handy for you. You may not realize it now, but when the examiners have to transfer the marks onto the first page, it becomes very much easier for them and reduces the chance of error. Okay, we number our answers correctly. That is also important, particularly if you are writing your questions in a different order than what is printed on your paper. The next tip I have for you is that you have to rewrite your sentence. This is important. This is a very easy way for you to keep your marks intact, which means that if you don't rewrite sentences, say for your textual MCQs, for your reference to context, question answers, grammar, all your grammar questions, if you don't rewrite the sentences, you risk losing your marks for stupid reasons. Your answer may be correct, but what happens is, say for the tenses, you have just written your answer, but you have not rewritten the sentence, where the question clearly tells you "écrivez les phrases," right? So you have to rewrite the sentences for objective questions. Make sure you do that. Don't be lazy. This is a language paper. You have sufficient time to answer everything and rewrite the sentences as well. Please avoid using English words at all costs, especially when you're writing your section D. Okay, this problem of English words shouldn't arise in the first three sections because you, in your text, you basically have everything from before, right? In your grammar, you are just conjugating verbs and inserting pronouns and stuff like that. In your section C, you are copying your answers from the comprehension passage given to you. Your only issue will arise in section D, where sometimes you may not know the words that you need to use. But what is the way out of that? Okay, there are two ways. One is you just ignore that sentence. You don't use that sentence. Okay, suppose you don't know a particular word, you just don't use that sentence. Okay, or the other way is think of another way of saying the same thing without the use of that particular word which you don't know. But at all costs, you should avoid using English words because remember, this is a foreign language paper. If you're writing a Hindi paper, would you suddenly use an English word there? No, right? So same thing, you can't do that here. Okay, so avoid English words at all costs, unless of course the word is the same. Then the next tip I have for you is that you check your answer paper once you are done. Okay, so once you finish attempting all the questions, don't sit back and think about your lunch. Sit and check your question paper. Every moment is precious, right? From the time you enter your examination hall to the time you leave. Every minute can be utilized for something or the other. So once you're done answering everything, check your paper twice and thrice to pick up the small errors that you may have skipped, okay, that may not have caught your eye the first time you were writing, because mistakes are bound to happen. It is a pressure situation, right? So check your paper carefully, go through it minutely, look for the small errors in grammar, spelling, punctuation, accents, okay, things that you may not have noticed the first time around when you were writing in your haste, you will pick up on the second and third time when you read through it. So don't be in a hurry to check as well. Go through it slowly, leisurely. You will pick up on the small mistakes, okay, and this checking time is where you actually gain your marks. Okay, now once you are done checking, once you are confident that you have checked it twice and thrice, you have found most of the mistakes, if not all, then you can go ahead and attempt the optional questions. This serves in handy only if you have time to spare. Do not compromise on checking your paper in order to attempt the optional questions. Do it only if you have time after you finish checking your paper. Okay, so after having checked your paper, it might be a good idea to attempt the optional questions for short answers. And don't sit and write the essay, okay, the extra postal or email. Don't sit and write those as options. That would not be good, okay, because that would take your time, and it's only for 4 marks, right? The section B stuff. So instead, go ahead and attempt all the options in your grammar section, or maybe your prose short answers, a reference to context here and there, perhaps attempt the grammar, because in grammar you have everywhere you have one extra question to answer, and it doesn't take you that long. Maybe at max 2 minutes per question in grammar by the time you think and write your answer, right? So go ahead and attempt those grammar section questions, okay, in the options, because what happens if you do not get one right? The options are there to back you up, okay? It gives you the luxury of being able to make one mistake in every grammar question. So use those options to your advantage, attempt them all if you have the time, okay? Then spelling is also important because this is a language paper. Now, how do you ensure good spelling? Is one thing is you have the textual section. Textual section, you have the material from before, so that you can prepare very well and go with your spelling. So be thorough with your textual spellings. Don't compromise on that. Okay, it's not just a question of learning the answers and reading the textbook. It's also learning how to write your answers well, which includes the grammar as well as the spelling components of it. Okay, for your grammar section, it is mostly verbs and do as directed and active passive and stuff like that. So all that will be basically from your question paper itself. Now, especially in the comprehension section, do not misspell words, because your answers and complete the followings and your frame sentences and opposites, whatever you have to do in the comprehension, your answers are from the passage. Okay, so you cannot afford to misspell stuff that you are copying from your question paper. Okay, that is a mistake which you should avoid at all costs. Be very careful when you're copying stuff from your question paper to your answer paper. The comprehension is the place for you to score your marks. Okay, now when we're talking about the last section, okay, that is your writing section, be it your card postal or your email. Okay, in the 12th you have the story. There are particular formats that you need to follow, okay, and those are technically marks that are there for your taking, because it is something that you can do beforehand and come. Okay, so be prepared with the date, okay, how you write the format, what has to be written, where the lines have to be left. Okay, please prepare yourself well with that before you go for your exam, because these are things that you can do beforehand, and what you can do beforehand you should do beforehand. Okay, now, when I say formats and specifications, you should be clear as to, say, for example, in the dialogue, it is not necessary that you rewrite the whole thing. You just have to number the blanks 1, 2, 3, 4 and write your answer. Save your time there. Okay. Then for the story, you don't have to rewrite. You don't have to write the moral. You don't have to give it a title. Nothing of that sort. Okay. For the picture, your picture description has to be not more than 7 to 8 lines. So if you know these things beforehand, it will save you a lot of time and give you a lot of clarity in your thought process when you're actually answering the paper. Okay. Now, my ninth tip is that you be aware of common grammatical errors. Okay, this is an issue that crops up in most papers. If everything is perfect except there are few slip ups here and there in the construction of the sentences. So be careful. If you have the time, solve some papers, get your teachers to correct them. Okay, and you can, even after you have got your papers corrected, go through them and see what mistakes you're making. Okay, see the common mistakes, or ask your teachers what the common errors are. Okay, and then do your best to avoid them, so you can be cognizant of the fact that those are the errors that people are making a lot. Okay, and you do your best to avoid making those same errors. For example, if you have picked out and put for you irregular participles when you're doing a passé composé, okay, when the adjectives have to agree, especially in your last section where you tend to use a lot of adjectives, your relative pronouns, when do you use he, when do you use ke, okay, and the dialogue, all the common mistakes that are made, the politesse, when you use the conditional and all that, okay. How do you conjugate a reflexive verb? When do you use a reflexive verb? For the 12 standards, how do you make the subjunctive? How can you use the subjunctive effectively in your writing section? Direct object pronouns, when does the participle agree? Appropriate use of prepositions, when do you use are, when do you use do? How do you make a preposition for a country, and so on. Okay, these are the common grammatical errors. There are tons more. If you just ask your teachers, they will be willing to tell you which are the errors that people make often. Okay, and this will be a very good exercise for you. It will help you concentrate more on those errors and ensure that you don't make them. Okay, the last tip I have for you is not is more of an encouraging word rather than a tip. It is for you to put your best foot forward. Okay, I know you've been through a difficult year, especially this batch of the 10th as well as the 12th, those who are going to answer public exams. But it is time now, just before your exams. Put your best foot forward, put your mind to work, and things can get done. Okay, even if you have not been focusing, not been concentrating too well over the past few months, or even for the past whole year for that matter, now is the time for you to shine. If you put your best foot forward, put your mind to work at this point, there is nothing that is stopping you from achieving success. Okay, leave nothing to chance, prepare yourself well. As I've said before, do whatever you can before the exam to prepare yourself well. Whatever can be done before, make sure it is done before. Leave nothing to chance, leave nothing for the day of the exam. Okay, with this, I end my session on 10 tips for you, those who are answering French for 10th and 12th. Merci à tous, bonne chance, good luck to you. If you have any queries, you are free to reach out to me. My email is given on screen, ajdesouza278@gmail.com. All the best to you, and God bless.